be presenting on their own personal journey panel. And so the people that will be presenting or working with us on this panel today are Maggie Grout, who's a high school student, is founder and CEO of her nonprofit Thinking Huts. So Maggie, you can go ahead and turn on your camera. We have Candice Majewski. She is the senior lecturer in mechanical engineering at the University of Sheffield. Go ahead, you can turn on your camera now. We have Beth Stuart as well. I have to do all of this as I'm talking right now. Beth Stuart, you can turn on your camera. She's a design engineer at SI-BONE, a medical device company. And then we have Alleyne, which I'm getting her permission right now, so go ahead and turn on your camera and mic, Ashley, who's the 3D printing lab assistant at Tapestry and works primarily with Coach. So, welcome all of you guys here today. I'm so glad to have you. I'm going to give each of you the opportunity to introduce yourselves because you know yourselves best, and I feel like it's straight from the horse's mouth is how it should be. So, Ashley, why don't you go first and tell us a little about you and the audience as well?
Sure. So my name's Ashley Alleyne. I've been doing 3D printing for about 4 years now. I have my degree in 3D printing and innovation, and I am skilled in FDM, SLA, and multi-jet 3D printing. And I'm the 3D printing assistant at Tapestry, which is the parent company of Coach, Kate Spade, and Stuart Weitzman. And I'm also a design entrepreneur in residence at a 3D printing lab in New Jersey, where I'm in the process of creating my own 3D printing jewelry and home decor business.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was great, Ashley. Really interesting what you're doing for your own entrepreneurial activities. Beth, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. My name's Beth Stuart. I'm probably relatively new to 3D printing within the last 2 or 3 years. I work in medical devices, so I'm a design engineer. And we basically make implants and instruments that are used in surgery. So, with 3D printing, we can make all sorts of new kind of cool, interesting implants and use that technology to our advantage to help us achieve different things like on growth and ingrowth and things that bone likes better, so you could say. My background is in biomedical engineering, and yeah, that's it.
Awesome, thank you so much. And then Candice?
Hi, yeah, so I'm an academic at the University of Sheffield over here in the UK. My background is actually mechanical engineering to start with, and I sort of, as you'll probably see, sort of fell into 3D printing. I realized about 20 years ago, which definitely makes me feel like the old person on the panel now. But yeah, I was kind of grabbed by it straight away. And so my job now is partly I get to teach about 3D printing, and part of it is research, particularly in powdered polymer processes. So I kind of get best of both worlds. I get to tell people about it, and I actually also get to do some of the stuff. And I'm already thinking how much I want to link up with the people on the panel and do cool stuff with you all as well.
Awesome, I love that. And last but not least, Maggie.
Hello, I'm a senior at CU Boulder. I'm studying business management. I founded a nonprofit named Thinking Huts, and we're planning to build the first 3D printed school in Madagascar this year.
Awesome, thank you, Maggie. And I apologize, I called you a high school student, but I forgot that you were university. I'm so sorry. No, it's A-okay though. So this panel was focused primarily on personal journeys. So I know you all are doing some really, really interesting things within your own business and within your own work, but I would kind of want to dive a little deeper into how you each got to where you are and, what makes you love additive manufacturing and 3D printing and the STEAM route. So I'm going to start it off with just a quick, really broad question. And it's, how did you know that you found your place where you're at? Or are you still not there yet? Does anyone want to take that?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Beth.
I would say that's a tough one. I think that, we all are continuously asking ourselves, like, if we're in the right place, maybe, are there other things that we want to be doing? But I would say it's really just a gut feeling, like, when something's not right for you, right? Like, you may be in a job that, you're not happy in, or or for whatever reason you want to make a change. I would say personally, I knew like a couple of years ago, moving out to California, I moved across the country for my job, which was really scary. But, I have an incredible team of people that I work with and people who really support and encourage me. I have so many opportunities to learn and grow, do like continuing education, learn new software, all of that. And, my company even just started a women's leadership network, which, is so great. I've not found that at another company I've been with. And, I think that's all so important, especially being a woman in a somewhat male-dominated industry. It's really nice to be in a place where those kinds of things are kind of prioritized. So for me, I would say it's kind of all those things that made me feel like I was in the right place.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So I think my answer would actually be much more simple than that, because the UK is quite small, right? So I haven't moved quite as far as you have in that case and everything. For me, how I know I found my place is because I just love to talk about this stuff. And so last week we had a couple of industry meetings that were just amazing. And I came off them thinking that's like really, I don't know, energized me for the day. And then like my husband or a friend or someone will say, oh, what's going on with you at work? And it's like, don't ask me that question unless you've got an hour for me to tell you the details. And I think whenever I find myself that excited by something and just, you can ask me about it on a bus and I'm going to tell you and I'm going to want to tell you. So for me, that's how I know. It's just the fact that I will constantly talk about 3D printing for as long as you give me time, and then probably a little bit more until you leave. But yeah, just the fact that I'm excited about it is my job, but I also want to talk about it outside of work. That's kind of how I know for me.
Awesome.
I'm gonna kind of mirror that a bit, because I think I knew I found my place for this job. I had my friends who love 3D printing and stuff, and we're all like hanging out and stuff. But once I had the interview, I was like, oh my God, there's other people who like 3D printing besides me. I was like, this is amazing. I'm like, where have y'all been my whole life? And so that really, really made me, feel like I found my place. But also through organizations like Women in 3D Printing, I met so many other people who love 3D printing, especially women in the industry. And even now, during a huge pandemic, what's going on, I've still been meeting so many people through Women in 3D Printing, like overseas in Australia. So I definitely think meeting other people like me and being able to talk about 3D printing like freely, like during the interview, they were probably like, how are we going to get this girl out of here? She won't stop talking about 3D printing. And so I definitely think I found my place by finding other people like me in the 3D printing industry.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Maggie, did you want to add to that question, or do you have a point for that?
Sure. I would just say that my journey started really young, and I knew that I wanted to use technology for good. And that's really what largely shaped me to wanting to incorporate 3D printing.
Great. Awesome. Thank you so much. And Ashley, you brought up like a very interesting point. You said you like found 3D printing and you knew that was your place within 3D printing, but does kind of that spot where you're meant to be, quote unquote, is that evolving? Because you also have these entrepreneurial activities that you're doing with 3D printing jewelry company that you're looking to start.
Definitely. I think when I kind of found my place as well, so I'm a guitarist. I love playing guitar. I've been playing my whole life. And the first thing I ever 3D printed was a full-size 3D printed guitar. That's when I was like, oh, I really like this. Like I can 3D print whatever I want. So I definitely think going on beyond that, I think when I also found my place I started 3D printing jewelry, which was a complete accident. Like how I kind of got into 3D printing, I wasn't expecting it at all. I went to school for photography, and now I'm doing 3D printing. And basically these earrings I made, they're 3D printed and I designed them. They were a present for my mom for Mother's Day, because the thing I wanted to make her 3D print was not coming out. So I made these in 5 minutes. And then when she really liked them, I was like, okay, it's my mom. But then other people came up to me, like, before the pandemic, like walking down the street, it was like, hey, where'd you get those earrings from? I'm like, I made them. They're 3D printed. Like, oh, you made them? So I definitely think that discovering 3D printing jewelry and all the things that I can 3D print, and having that feeling like, oh my God, there's so much more to explore. I definitely think that helped find like I'm supposed to be doing this.
Mm-hmm. For sure, definitely. So do you think that like these kind of life experiences that you have, Ashley, like your interest in guitar playing, and I know, Maggie, you want to help people. You've always been interested in nonprofits. Do you think that was something that really kind of pushed you to figure out, or like drove you to figure out what you want to do, but maybe not exactly as in the same sense of 3D printing?
I would say for me, it did start with 3D printing because I wanted to build schools using this technology. But I was definitely driven by the other passions, as you said, being interested in nonprofits, and that's shaped what I hope to do in the long term.
Awesome, great. Beth or Candice, did you have anything that you'd like to add on to those points?
I was going to say, I think that's quite interesting because my finding 3D printing was really, we had a guest lecture about it when I was on my undergrad degree, and I just went, whoa, that's amazing. But for me, it was a bit, engineering was fine, but I found a lot of it perhaps a little bit stale, and I couldn't quite see, I knew why it was important, but I couldn't quite see that direct link to things. And then we saw this 3D printing thing, and it was like, right, so you've got this technology, but then you have, it's very easy to see the output of it. And actually that guest lecture, they were talking about all the different possibilities. And it was, I think it was that it was the first time I'd really seen exactly how engineering and manufacturing and all that stuff could translate to stuff. And I don't know if that was, I mean, when I was on my undergrad, a lot of it was very theoretical and not so application based. And then this guy just came in and talked about 3D printing. I was like, oh, like, so it was kind of, for me, it was very much, I wanted that tangible outcome at the end of something, and then the thing, and being able to see through the process and everything. So yeah, I think it was the first time I'd been that excited by anything that we'd covered, like to the level that I said, I want to spend my life doing that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would add on that, like, similarly, I remember I went to a medical device conference like 4 years ago or something, and all of a sudden, like, every company had a 3D printed product. And it was just really exciting to see, because they could really create so many more, cool things than what we're kind of limited to with traditional manufacturing techniques. So for me, that was a point where I was like, oh, I really want to go work for a company that, is more into 3D printing and kind of does that. So
for sure, definitely. And it's interesting, again, because each of you found 3D printing after you kind of developed yourself. Maggie, you exclude because you are relatively, like me, young, right? After you had developed this skill set, Candice, or engineering school, and Beth, you were working in a traditional manufacturing sense as well, if I remember correctly from our kickoff meeting. So how does everyone's overall unique experiences that you kind of built up before finding your quote-unquote passion of 3D printing contribute to your overall success now that you're here and working with it?
Yes, I'd say from my side, a lot of it actually comes into teaching. And so because I kind of had that light bulb moment of someone coming in and talking to us about this stuff, I think it's helped me develop my own teaching, and to kind of be able to look back at that and say, right, what was it I was so excited about? Oh, it was like, it was this, and it was this, and it was this. And perhaps having had that experience of not being so into the really theoretical subjects, I think it's really shaped how I try to do that and make it more about, the impact and the overall use of the technologies, and not just, okay, well, here's some equations that you can work some stuff out, because sure, that's important. But I think when you're trying to get people engaged with a subject in the first place, you've got to kind of hit them with, this is why it's cool. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting hearing about the medical stuff. I remember being at a conference once where someone gave a talk on a particular medical application for a specific patient situation. And you look around at the end, and honestly, half of the audience were just in tears with how amazing this was. And it was kind of that thing where you go, wow, isn't it amazing to work in an area that can have that kind of impact and effect? And genuinely, half the people there were either openly crying or kind of, oh, I've got something in my eye just over here. But you could really see the benefit that it was having on just that individual. And then you could see how it would have that impact more broadly. And so I think examples like that are really good to be able to get across to people.
Awesome. Definitely. Ashley or Beth, do you have anything you'd like to add to Candice's point at all?
So I think for me, having a background in fashion photography actually helped me get the job I have now. Because I went to school for fashion photography. I didn't have any plan of doing 3D printing whatsoever. I've been doing fashion photography for 14 years. I've been published in 15 magazines, including Vogue Italia. So I've photographed people from MTV. So I literally had no plan of doing 3D printing. So during the interview that for my job that I have now, they were like, well, you went to school for photography. How does that relate to fashion 3D printing? And I explained to them that I went to school for fashion photography. And then I kind of clicked and I showed them my fashion photography portfolio. And they were really impressed with that. So I definitely think my background in fashion photography definitely helped me get this job in fashion 3D printing.
So cool, those transferable skills that you kind of developed in fashion photography and how it carries over to something that's, I don't know anything about fashion photography, but I'm assuming 3D printing, when you have like gears and things making stuff, it's more like mechanical technical, right? Yeah, so it's very interesting how they were able to find that balance to fit you in. That's so cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't know that either about Vogue Italia. That one took me by storm. So we actually, oh, by the way, everyone that's listening in, we actually do have a Q&A box. So if you have any questions at all that you'd like me to ask the panel, or go to the panel, please put them in that box. And we do have one. So while we're on the topic of fashion, Ashley, what was the first step in making 3D printing green fashion? Who will answer that?
I'm gonna push that further and talk about 3D in general. I'm not talking about tapestry. I'm talking about me as a person. So let's say I'm Ashley Allen. I'm the CEO of fashion company X, right? I want to make this, but I'm going to have to go through 5 physical samples to make this shirt, and I'm going to manufacture it in country Y overseas. So instead of having to go through 5 samples and maybe like, oh, I don't know if I want to make this or not or sell this. So me as company X, I can instead make this shirt that I'm wearing in a 3D software and make it look as photorealistic as possible, as if it was on a person. And that way it's more sustainable, it reduces your carbon footprint, and you get a faster prototype. So I definitely think making things in 3D, and I feel like 3D printing goes along with that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to be fielding the audience Q&As to make sure that we can get through them, because the audience is ultimately who we're serving. So if there's any more questions, I'll pop them in as we go. But I do want to circle back to something that Candice and Beth, you both said, was that you kind of had this catalyst for your interest in additive manufacturing. Candice, it was that undergraduate guest lecture, and Beth, it was your attendance at that medical conference where you were able to see 3D printed things. So what was, again, like, how important are catalysts for your careers and your paths going forward? And how can you help facilitate catalysts in your life to figure out where you need to go?
That's such a great question. I think, you can facilitate it in a number of different ways. For me, it was, launching my first product and, kind of taking my, design from concept to now it's on the market. And that really opened, I think, a lot of doors for me at that point. I kind of had this project under my belt. But I would say also, like, in terms of, like, sort of propelling your career, like, networking is so important. I think, doing this here is so important. Talking to other like-minded people and, talking about the technology, maybe how people use it in other ways, can give you ideas and maybe help you decide, like, what trajectory you want to go. So, yeah, I would say that networking is definitely important.
Yeah, I'd 100% agree with that. I think one thing we talked about on a previous panel, actually, that's really good is social media helps so much with that. And, if you jump on Twitter and you just search for 3D printing or, whatever the thing is you're interested in, like thermodynamics, I don't know, and you search for that and you can find people to follow and you can figure out, a lot of the big magazines and conferences and organizations will have websites as well, and they'll have Twitter accounts. And so you can engage with people in that way. And you can just, I don't know, once you're known to people, I think it's easy to then get that word spread as well. So if I knew that you were new to this area, but you were looking for information on certain stuff, I might go, oh, I've just spoken to someone who kind of is doing something in that area, or, I know someone who's doing something in medical or fashion or whatever it might be. And certainly in this industry, I've always found, ever since I first got into it, that people are really willing to help with that stuff. And we'd probably all on this panel agree there's something really nice about someone just messaging you and saying, hey, I know you're working in this. I'm really interested in it. I think it's super cool. Like, can you point me in the right direction? And so, yeah, I think that networking, but also kind of making use of that social media landscape to be able to find people and see interesting stuff is a really good way of learning stuff. And the benefit on social media is you can kind of lurk for a bit and you can see what's being talked about. And then when you feel a bit more confident, maybe you kind of like you share a few things, or, then you gradually get involved in some conversations. And so you can kind of take it at your own speed. And I think I find it really difficult walking into a room full of people and kind of networking. Like, that's one of my least favorite things to do. But if you're in a situation like on social media where you can build up to it, you can take it at your own speed, you can engage with people when you feel comfortable to. I think there's a lot of opportunities like that that don't involve that kind of walking into a room and just going, hi, I'm me, tell me stuff, if that makes sense.
For sure. Those are some lovely points, Candice, about the networking and social media and how it plays a very important role in being able to educate yourself on kind of what you want to do and explore things, but without necessarily having those anxiety-provoking elements to it. So I appreciate that feedback. We have another question from an audience member, Dolores, who's asking, how does one prepare for your future career track, and what majors in college prepared you for your positions? So open to the field for everyone here.
Start. For me, I got an undergrad in biological engineering and got my master's in biomedical engineering. I would say, though, you could also do mechanical to work in medical devices. That's certainly relevant early in engineering. Also, I would say, like, in terms of preparing for my ultimate career, I could have gone two very different paths. I was kind of thinking, maybe I'll go to medical school because I was interested in medicine. But then having a degree that, allowed me to do a lot of different things really kind of gave me the opportunity to go into medical devices and still work within the medical field, but also be able to do design and some of the other things I love. So, yeah, for medical devices, I would say, an engineering undergrad is certainly going to help you. And then, also maybe, like I took a couple of years before going to grad school to work in research and really figure out what I wanted. I think, sometimes we have this need to kind of want to just jump to the next thing and get through school or whatever, but sometimes I think it's good to maybe take a step back and work and say, is this really what I want to do?
Mm-hmm. Sure, thank you so much. Maggie, is there anything that you did as you're looking for your journey going forward as a young person in school as a senior that helped prepare you for your future as well?
Well, I started off as an engineering major at the Colorado School of Mines, and so what I did there was reach out to my professors, and they actually encouraged me to instead pursue business as a degree, because it's one thing to know the technical side, but they said if you want to get your idea and turn it into a reality, you need to know the business side. So that's probably the biggest switch in how I changed, I guess, directions so I could pursue what I wanted to do.
Really? So just being open and willing to change your path from something that you thought was going to be your future into something new. It's basically what you're saying. Awesome, thank you. We have a couple more questions from the audience, which I really do appreciate. I think one of them that's very interesting for all of us is if you could go back in time, is there anything that you would do differently?
Answer that. Okay, so I was a lab tech at my school's 3D printing lab. The one thing, if I can go back in time, is when at first initially starting out, not to be so scared of breaking a 3D printer, because I feel like that kind of limited my kind of hindered me 3D printing or try to fix the 3D printer. But one day my friend said, you break it, you learn how to fix it. And then after that point, I was like, okay, I was taking apart 3D printers. I'm like, okay, give me whatever 3D printer you want. It's broken, okay. And I think that really helped me like understand FDM 3D printing and even SLA 3D printing even more. So definitely back to in time, not being so scared of breaking a 3D printer, because I think the best thing you can do is learn how to fix it. I feel like that will help you learn 3D printing even more.
I'm so super glad you said that, because it's really the same that we do with our PhD students, and actually, undergrad and master's project students as well, is that it's really easy to have this fear of getting it wrong, in inverted commas. And like, especially if you're doing a PhD and you're doing it in, we do a lot of material related PhDs, and like, you can try something and all the evidence that you've got so far and all the literature suggests that it will work, and then you try it and it just doesn't. And so it's a similar thing, getting over that hurdle of, what if I try something and it doesn't work? It's like, well, if it doesn't work, then that's a really interesting research area. One of our researchers, Bob, a couple of years ago said, what's really interesting is despite all this body of literature saying this thing should work, it doesn't. And like, that's really confusing, but it's kind of, it gives you a further direction. But I think it is getting over that hurdle of, if I get it wrong, I can just, like you say, fix it, or, we'll try a different thing, or we'll figure out why that didn't work and all of that. But I think that not having a fear of exploring stuff is really important if you want to, as you say, really, really understand the processes or the materials or the design or whatever it is you're working in.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, for sure. So why do you think that Ashley and Candice, and even Maggie and Beth as well, why do you think this fear of failure is so prevalent?
I can answer that from a UK perspective, and I think it comes back, well, I don't speak for the whole of the UK, obviously, but our education system a lot, like through school, so through high school and everything, it's very much geared to there's a right and a wrong answer to things. And, if you want to pass your exams, you write down this and you use this wording and here's the answer. And then you kind of get to uni and, we try to make things so it moves away from that, but it's still necessarily, there's a period of time where it is really like that. And so I think a lot of it is just, you've had so many years in school of being told there's a right answer. And then you come into, in our case, certainly into research, and it's like, well, who knows what the answer is, right? There's definitely an answer. There might be multiple answers, but until we have a go at it, we won't find out. So I think it's inherent in that education system that if you're not expected to kind of think through open-ended problems and kind of try things and explore, then suddenly you hit that stage of uni or a PhD or a career or whatever, and it's like, you just kind of don't know how to handle that situation. So that's certainly something we see a lot at uni, is kind of trying to get people past that barrier of there having to be one right answer and everything else is wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think there's also just like, it's human nature to not want to fail. Who likes failure, So I think too, like, just the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it. Like, you're gonna, create things, or like in Ashley's example, break things. But then you learn from that. So I think it's just, it's really just human nature to not want to fail.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, just when I was starting out in 3D printing, I think I had maybe a bit of imposter syndrome, because, a lot of people I knew actually had some kind of background in engineering or soldering or something. For me, I was like, art. So I think for me, I guess I kind of was scared of failure, but then I realized like actually failure is kind of a good thing because you learn how to experiment. This process my professors came up with is called disclose, deviate, and merge. And basically the process is experimenting, learning from your experiments. And there is no such thing as failure. The only time when you fail is when you've learned nothing at all. So I definitely feel like I got over my imposter syndrome. You know, I'm like, I love 3D printing. Like, it doesn't matter where I came from. I didn't have experience in X, Y, and Z. Like, if you give me a 3D printer, like, I'll be happy for the rest of my life. Like, let me take it apart. Let me use it. So, yeah, now I'm really embracing 3D printing. And, you know, not having a background in X, Y, and Z is totally okay. I've never built a guitar before, but I've 3D printed a whole entire guitar. I had no experience in jewelry whatsoever. The only time I did anything jewelry related was when I went to like beadcraft with my friends when I was like 8 years old. That's the only experience I had. Like, I've never made jewelry before, and now I'm 3D printing jewelry. I definitely think at first imposter syndrome, like, definitely felt like, you know, I had that a bit, but now I'm completely over that. And don't be afraid to fail. Yeah, the only time when you fail is when you've learned nothing from your experiments.
That's a really powerful quote. The only time that you fail is when you don't learn anything. I love that. I'm going to carry that with me for a while, Ashley. So we have a very popular question in the Q&A right now. And they're asking for someone planning to make the journey into 3D printing with little to no experience. What would you tell them to expect? Maggie, do you have any thoughts?
I would say it's going to be difficult, to be honest, in the beginning because people may not take you very seriously, especially if you're younger. That's from my experience. People may just assume that you don't know what's going on. But I would definitely start by reaching out to people you admire, and maybe they'll become a mentor and help you break into this space more. For example, Brett Hagler is the CEO of a nonprofit that builds 3D printed houses. So he's been really helpful in giving advice in that area.
So one thing I'd add to that, actually, I think finding mentors is really, really important. I think one thing to expect if you're new to the area is just there's such a huge range of jobs that there are in 3D printing. And like, you know, if you take all the different sectors and then all the different types of jobs and, you know, sales and marketing and like working on the equipment or the materials or research and, you know, working from a business side of things and like I say, all the different sectors you can work in. And I think be prepared for that, because I think that can be a bit overwhelming when you first come to it. And, you know, maybe it's a case of try some different things, or, you know, talk to some different people in different areas and figure out where you want to be. But I think that's certainly the thing I felt overwhelmed by when I first saw it. It was like, wow, I really want to work in this, but I don't know how or why or what to do and all of that stuff. And so, yeah, I think just be prepared for there being such a range of things you could do, and that it might take a little while to kind of to find your specific thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would also add, like, you know, there's also a lot you have to learn kind of up front with 3D printing. I think, you know, maybe whether it's how you're modeling something in CAD or you know, if you're using some type of like anthropology type software, you know, just be ready to kind of learn and maybe do some YouTube tutorials and things like that. There's a lot of great like free online resources that are available to people if they really want to learn. Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing I would say is enjoy the journey. Definitely enjoy the journey of 3D printing. You know, sometimes you want to go throw your 3D printer against the wall. Like, why isn't this printing? Why isn't this working? But I think you learn through every step you take, and also incorporate what you love into 3D printing. So for me, I know I keep talking about it, but I love guitar. I have my 5 guitars right next to me. I definitely think incorporating what I love, 3D printing guitars, I definitely think that really helped me get into 3D printing and showed me what's possible. So I definitely think if you can 3D incorporate what you love into 3D printing, I think, that might be a good start.
Definitely, for sure. I'd like to circle back to the mentorship part that both Maggie and Candice, you both mentioned. And we have a question from Elizabeth Bishop, who said, how would you go about finding a mentor, and any advice for approaching someone or places to look for people willing to be mentors? Before we answer that question, I'm going to do a shameless plug. So Elizabeth, direct message me your email, because Women in 3D Printing Next Gen, which is our youth program here with Women in 3D Printing, is actually putting together a mentorship program. So you can be paired with a mentor easily enough. It's great. Anyone that wants the information on that, I can put it up after this panel, but you can also email or chat me your email and I'll send it to you. So that's one way. But Catalyst, what is the way to find a mentor?
It's funny because I was going to say, things like this, like the Women in 3D Printing, it's like there's so many people here and so many people that you'll meet through those types of situation, or like conferences and events. Just the one thing I wanted to say is just no one's ever going to be offended if you ask them if they can be your mentor. So, and someone might turn around and say, look, I don't have time or capacity to do that. Maybe they'll suggest someone else, but like it's always a flattering thing if someone comes to you and says, I admire you, I like the career journey you're taking, I like what you're doing, would you be willing to mentor me? And, the worst case is someone really says, I'm really flattered, but I can't do that right now. And best case is you get yourself a mentor. But I don't know a single person that would turn around and be mean about the question or be offended by the question. So I'd just say, yeah, if there's someone you want to mentor you, just ask, see what they say.
Also gotta jump on that too. I definitely think, I guess depending on where you live, if like I know in New York, if you maybe go on the Meetup app, there's a bunch of maker spaces in New York and in New Jersey. So maybe get in touch with the maker space, see if you can maybe shadow someone or learn from someone. And also just finding friends too in 3D printing, because I know the makerspace I use, I have all my friends there. If one person doesn't know something, you'll learn something from the other person. You exchange ideas and knowledge too. So that way I can go to this person if I don't know X, Y, and Z. Know something they don't know, they can come to me. So also finding friends who also do 3D printing, find a community. And it doesn't even have to be in person, because we're in a pandemic. Like there's a huge 3D printing subreddit on Reddit, and you can ask questions, share your 3D prints. So I've also just add finding a community, people who do 3D printing in general, and because you also can learn from different people too without maybe having a per se mentor. Maybe you could just have a bunch of mentors and a bunch of friends who you can gain knowledge from.
Definitely, that was a really, really good point about having multiple mentors. And basically kind of what I'm hearing, Ashley, is you saying that there's a network, having a network of friends that are knowledgeable so you can draw on them, correct?
It's definitely what I had in the beginning. When I met friends who already had more experience than I did. So they definitely helped me out when I got started. And now we all help each other out no matter what. If I know something that they don't know, they come to me, and vice versa. One person might be experienced in soldering, like I don't know how to solder, then I go to that person. So I definitely feel like, kind of having a network, having a community definitely helps a lot.
Mm-hmm. Sure, definitely. I like that. And I think Candice, to your point as well, attending events like Women in 3D Printing conferences or any digital conference online involving around 3D printing is very helpful for finding those mentors during the pandemic itself when we can't meet in person. So thank you for that. All right, we have time for maybe one or two more audience questions. So I gotta go and pick and choose which one I like best. Let's see here. So what is your favorite thing about your job?
For me, it's the design aspect. I love getting in that headspace and just like taking, 3 hours and like coming up with something new. I always enjoy that the most, as opposed to, all of the paperwork and the other things that might go along with what I do. I think being able to kind of come up with a new concept is really cool.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
I think from my side, I mean, I love teaching. There's times when I can't believe I'm getting paid to stand there and talk for an hour about 3D printing, right? It's like, hey, I'd do this for free if you need me to. But I think one of the things that's nice on the research side of my job is, especially in academic research, you have quite a lot of autonomy, quite a lot of choice about things. And so what it kind of means is no one's telling me go off and research this thing. And so if we're sat there and we're having a group meeting and someone says something and it sounds interesting, like you can go explore that thing. And so, we have some things that we're working on that are definite things that we need to get done, but there's always that space to just kind of, comes back to Ashley's point about breaking things, like preferably not some of our research machines, but, just trying something and saying, hey, if this doesn't work, we learn something from it. So I enjoy that freedom because it kind of, it offsets the bits of an academic job that are much more strict and kind of, scheduled and everything. But yeah, I like getting to play sometimes, I think is the the way to sum that.
For me, seeing the final product is the most rewarding thing, and saying I was a part of that. I actually have some of the final products from Tapestry. I just need to grab it. It's literally right next to me. I can show them. Just give me 1 second.
You should. Maggie, while Ashley is going to grab those small parts, do you want us to share what maybe your favorite thing about being either a student or working with Thinking Hats and founding this nonprofit is?
Sure. I think the biggest thing for me is the opportunity to create an impact and the potential we could have by using this technology.
Thank you. Ashley, do you have parts? I love samples, by the way. If you don't know that about me, I love samples. So I'm on the edge of my seat right now.
Sorry. I just realized I thought I had them next to me, but they kind of disappeared. So these are Kate Spade rings that at one point 3D printing was utilized. So I can show you that it was part of 3D printing. This is the Kate Spade poolside ring. The Kate Spade Tutti Frutti lemon ring. And then this is the Kate Spade Tutti Frutti strawberry ring. So these are examples of some final products where 3D printing was utilized.
Awesome. That's so cool. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. But we are just at time right now. We are at the 45-minute mark. And right now, currently, we are actually supposed to be going into the networking part of the conference. But I do just want to say thank you so much to you, Candice, Maggie, Beth, and Ashley for your time today. It was a wonderful panel. And I know I gained a lot of knowledge about paths and how to figure out where I'm going to go as a young person in my future and how to meld my two passions of additive manufacturing, and I love music as well, so music and things like that to give me inspiration, Ashley. So thank you so much, you guys, and I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to all the panelists. I think every time I do one of these, I learn something from everyone else, and that's a really fun part of doing it as well.
For sure. Awesome. Well, you guys are free to turn off your cameras and mic. And